Good evening, fellow Toastmasters. My name is Kalidas Cherulil, the current Club Growth Director for District 4. Today, we have a webinar on how to organize an open house. This becomes particularly important for District 4 because we have an incentive going on right now where you can, as a club, you can achieve certain incentives by meeting the requirements. By doing this, you also help the club grow and the district grow with it. To present this webinar, we have a very distinguished individual from our district. Joe Madley, who is a distinguished Toastmaster, has been with Toastmasters for close to 30 years. He was a district governor in 1993 to 1994. He has been a district treasurer twice. He was a marketing advisor once, chaired an audit committee once, and he was also a regional advisor for District 2, dealing with 7 districts in Region 2. This session, just like any other session that we have in Toastmasters, is timed, which means we'll start at time, we'll end at time. This session is also recorded. The recording will be made available to you through YouTube and through the D4TM site. We will be uploading this video onto the D4TM site. I'll be sending out the link to all of you. As Joe goes through this, I'm sure all of you will have questions for Joe. There are 2 ways to do it. If it's something urgent, please feel free to type it into the chat window so that if required, I can interrupt Joe only if really required. I'll interrupt Joe and Joe will answer your question. Otherwise, please hold your questions for the second half of the session. Once Joe is done with it, he will actually dedicate some time to answer your questions. With that said, I'll hand it over to Joe to start the webinar. Over to you, Joe.
Thank you, Kalidas. Good afternoon or good evening, fellow Toastmasters. You really want to know how to organize an open house. Well, that's the main thing we're going to talk about tonight. And probably the first, here's the 5 things that we're going to cover. And as Kalidas mentioned, we will have a question and answer period at the end of this. The first and the most important thing about doing anything is the why. And so we're going to talk a little about the why. Secondly, we're going to talk about the preparation for an open house. Thirdly, the promotion techniques, and those are the most important things about an open house or anything else you do to promote your club. There's a saying in real estate that the 3 most important things in real estate are location, location, location. And in promoting anything in Toastmasters, it's promotion, promotion, promotion as the 3 most important things. We're also going to talk about the day of the open house, and finally, an after-action report or after the open house. So, with that, we will talk about the why. Obviously, the main reason to have an open house is to add new members. And you may be rebuilding a low membership club. As Kalidas mentioned, you can earn district credit. And if you hold an open house in February and in turn sign up 4 members from that open house within 4 weeks of the open house, you will receive $50 in district credit. And finally, and this was the most important thing for me, it was a team building exercise. And I want to give you just an overview of what my club looked like before we had our first open house. I belonged to a club that had 8 members. We were meeting regularly. We were doubling up on duties, which got really old really quickly. Occasionally we would attract a new member, and however, unfortunately, at the same time we attracted a new member or two, one of our existing members decided to bail because of there only being 8, 9 members at most at that time, I think 10 members of the club. So we were looking to rebuild our club. And even if you have 20 members in your club and fewer than 10 of them are showing up, you want to add new members just to revitalize your club. The typical attendance for any club is typically around 60% of your existing members. It obviously won't be the same 60%, or you definitely will have to add new members. But the idea is that if you are putting on a well-run meeting, you will have at least 60% of your members. Last night, my club now has 26 members. Last night, at Wednesday night's meeting, we had 8 guests. 3 of them were returning guests. One of the returning members joined, and one of the people that was there for the very first time also joined. So, needless to say, we are a far cry from the 8 or 10 members we had 2 or 3 years ago. So, I want to talk a little about also the team building exercise. When we had 8 members, I told the club that I would work at rebuilding the club or adding new members, but I wanted help. And at that time, for whatever reason, no one was willing to step forward to do that. Fortunately, we had a woman join the club who was in marketing, and she did, in fact, step forward. In fact, she was responsible for our first open house. And I'll tell you a little about that open house a little later. But just to say that we, in turn, did have the first one, and after the first one, it became a little easier when we went on to the next one. So, obviously preparation. Pick a date and a time. And usually you want to look at a date that is at least 3 weeks out, because most people's schedules are scheduled just that. They are about out 3 weeks. So if you pick a date 3 weeks in advance, you're usually good to get onto someone's calendar. And back to the team building exercise, certainly select an open house chair and a committee. And the committee becomes really important. You want to select a keynote speaker. You want someone that's believable. If you have someone that is a international speaker quality person in your club, preferably not use that particular person. Use someone that is maybe on their 5th, 6th, 7th speech in the club. And they are more believable. And certainly in doing the keynote speaker, you want an introduction for that person. And the reason for the introduction, even if you don't do this for your regular club meetings, it's important for an open house because you want someone that people can relate to. And if they know a little history about the person, how long they've been with the club, what they do in real life, in other words, their regular occupation, and what they do within that company. So you want to plan an abbreviated agenda. You want the first part of the meeting to be the nuts and bolts of a typical Toastmasters meeting with the speaker, an evaluation, and some table topics. The second portion is for open questions, and certainly just meeting with and talking to people. You don't necessarily have to have a formal meet and greet session, but if you go through your first portion and you answered all the questions, you can in turn turn it into a meet and greet. Really important, have guest packets. Go to a stationery store, buy some blue folders. I happen to like blue because of Toastmasters logo, but it can be any color folder, and folder with pockets. And certainly put a membership application in there. I typically include the history of Toastmasters International, which is a one-page flyer, and a piece of literature. There are two things that Toastmasters has that are trifold flyers. And one of them is item 101, which is entitled Your Path to Leadership. And the other one is item 99, which is Find Your Voice. And that one's in subtitle, Shape Your Future with Your Words. I want to relate to you a quick story about one of those flyers. We, of course, put our club name and contact information on a label within that flyer. And we had been giving these out for some time. And finally someone walked through the door that I had seen before, but he had been there far enough back that I literally couldn't remember what his name was, and he realized that. He introduced himself to me. And he joined the club that night. But I want to tell you why he joined the club that night and why he came back to the club. And this was like 7 or 8 months later. He took that flyer from that packet, and he was involved in a project at work at the time, and he was working 10, 11-hour days to finish that project. He put it on his bulletin board, and he said from time to time he looked at the flyer. And finally, when he finished the project, he took the flyer off the bulletin board and came back to our club. So even if someone doesn't join immediately, the fact that they have information about your club with the name and contact information, your email address for whoever is your membership person, a phone number for them to talk to them in person, it will reap benefits. Certainly invite dignitaries from the district. Area and division directors love to come to things like this if they are available, and they can certainly add credibility to your club. Again, if you're a low membership club or you are having low turnout for your meetings. And the other thing you can do is invite former members. We just had an open house for a club in South San Francisco, and we suggested this to the organizer of that particular event. And she not only invited a former member, she invited a former member who turned out to be our speaker. And he did just an excellent, excellent job of being the guest speaker. And something happened to that meeting that has never happened to me before. And as Kalidas mentioned to you, I've been at this for some time. Usually when I ask for a show of hands of who will join the club at the end of the meeting, I get usually 75, 80, sometimes 85%. There were 14 people in the room. 3 of them were existing members of the club. The other 11 were guests. Everyone in the room said they would join, and we're in the process of getting them signed up. So former members can be a really, really good source of both giving credibility, giving history of the club, and in this instance, giving a speech. So let's go on to the next one. As I mentioned earlier, promotion is extremely popular, extremely necessary to promote a club. You can do a special flyer, and the district, I believe on their district website, I'm certainly on the Toastmaster website, there are flyers you can download that are full color and add your club's information to it. Word of mouth. Talk about it at work. Talk about it at your church. Talk about it anywhere and everywhere. Certainly post things on Facebook, on Meetup, on Twitter, and finally d4tm.org. Something that we did that most clubs, I think most clubs tend to overlook. Most of the regional newspapers, like the San Mateo Daily, will accept ads from nonprofits at no charge. And we have advertised in them both for our regular meetings and certainly for our open houses. And we've gotten people to respond to that. And start out with Toastmasters open house and then the details. And certainly if you provide refreshments, I've always said that feed them and they will come. You can keep that at a very minimum, chips and dip, drinks, cookies. We've found that cookies work really well for some reason. One other thing that we did to promote an open house, and actually we held the open house at a public library in San Carlos. And libraries love putting on special events. And the woman that I mentioned earlier that was in marketing contacted the San Carlos Library, talked to the librarian. She was, in fact, familiar with Toastmasters, and I think she was familiar with Toastmasters because for a period of time when my club was looking for a home, and that was the other thing that was happening during that period that my club had 8 or 10 members, we kept losing our meeting site, so we had to keep finding a new home. Well, for a period of time, we met at the San Carlos Library, and it's a great, great library, has a wonderful, wonderful meeting room. The only disadvantage to that is that if the city wants to take over a meeting, they have precedence. And if there's anyone that has something scheduled for that night, like we did on one occasion for a meeting, they kicked us out. So that was a little bit of an issue, particularly for the guests that showed up for that meeting that night. But getting back to what we did to promote this, we talked to the librarian, and she said, we would love to have you give a presentation on public speaking. So we did just that. Here was the wonderful, wonderful thing she did for us. She sent out to all the people that are members of the San Carlos Library via email an invitation to our open house. And I think we had something like 14 people show up for that. I think that was the largest turnout that we had for any of the open houses that we've done. And interestingly enough, there was a woman who had been a member of the club that I helped start, and the company moved out of the area, and of course the club went away. But she came back as a guest to that open house and subsequently became a member of our club. So anything and everything that you can think of in terms of techniques for doing an open house is open game. And whatever you do, just promote the heck out of it. It's like, I held a party and no one came. So unless people know about the party, they're not going to come. So let's go on to the day of the open house. Certainly have meeting room readiness. And a lot of clubs put the banner inside their meeting. Put the banner in the hallway. You want people to know where you are and who you are. Even people that happen to walk by say, oh, there's a Toastmasters club there. Certainly have your lectern. Ribbons are optional. Welcome to Toastmasters is a nice thing to give to your guests. Certainly your best table topics speaker ribbon, best speaker, best evaluator, those are always nice, and it shows people that they're appreciated. I've already mentioned refreshments. Keep those at a minimum or certainly low cost. There are several videos that Toastmasters has if you want to show one of those. Certainly, and most important, is to have a sign-up sheet. I know that most clubs, in turn, not only have a sign-up sheet, they have a guest booklet. So you will have a permanent record of the people that attend your open house. And it does really no good to have an open house and have guests if you don't have any way to follow up with them. And you certainly want to put on a good show. You want to put on a great, great meeting. So choose someone that is, first of all, very comfortable in front of a lot of new people as your Toastmaster, and explain each facet of the meeting, be it prepared speeches, the table topics, evaluations. Certainly, as I mentioned earlier, leave time to socialize. People typically like to learn things on a one-to-one basis. And in fact, there are people that if you have an open question and answer period, there are people that do not want to ask their specific questions in front of the entire group. So they, in turn, if you spend some time with them and socialize and answer their questions one-on-one, they're more comfortable, and they, of course, will get their questions answered. And this is something that we do. We didn't do it for a long time, but we typically do this at our regular club meetings. And that is, we ask for guest feedback. And in most instances, it is really positive. If you get negative feedback, either on an open house or your regular club meetings, certainly meet with your officers and address that. There's nothing more that will kill a club than not having good meetings and not leaving a good feeling with guests who attend your meetings. So, really, really, really important. After an open house, it's follow-up. And there was a book written by a salesperson that I happen to have a personally autographed copy of. And the premise of this person's book is that something like 70% of all sales leads worldwide are never followed up on. You are selling a product. You are selling the Toastmasters program. In fact, you, as a member, are the biggest brand that your club has. So send thank you notes, both to the people that participated in planning and putting on the open house. Certainly send emails to the people who attended your meetings, inviting them back. And certainly one of the things during the last part of your meeting, invite people to come back. Invite them to come to your regular meetings. And quick story. You also need to ask them to join. Quick story. I helped start 2 clubs at Oracle. And the second club met in the evening, and it was on my way home from the electronics company I worked for in Milpitas at the time. So it was real neat for me to stop by that meeting on the way home. It fit in perfectly with my time. And I kept seeing the same person there for about 6 weeks running. And after the 6th meeting, I said, I haven't seen you speak yet. And he says, well, the reason I haven't spoken yet is no one's asked me to join. And needless to say, I immediately went and grabbed one of the members, and I said, we need to get this man an application. And with the application, he did, in fact, join, and I think 2 weeks later, he was speaking. So not only do you welcome people back, some people are reluctant to ask people to join. Don't be reserved about that. You have one of the best products in the world. In fact, Toastmasters International did a survey about 8 to 10 years ago, and they released the results of that survey at an international convention. I think we were in Kentucky at the time, so it was probably more than 8 or 10 years ago. At any rate, Toastmasters International has the highest acceptance rate of any volunteer organization worldwide. So if you run good meetings, if you invite people to come back to your meetings, and you invite people to join, you will increase your membership. Also, one of the most important things in meeting with your committee after the open house is discuss what went well. What did the guests like? What did the guests comment on that went well? And if you had a little bump along the way, look at what you can do for areas of improvement for the next one. Toastmasters is a learning exercise. Make it just that. Continue to improve on what you've done thus far and work from there. And I just want to go back to the thank you notes for a second. If you have someone's address, mailing address, I mean, emails are nice. Other than a Christmas card, when was the last time you received something in the mail? Hardly ever. So a written thank you note is something very, very, very special. And if you do it, someone gives you their mailing address. In fact, I mentioned this at officer training about a week ago. And someone said, well, some people are reluctant to give us their mailing addresses. And I can understand that. So definitely send them an email. And again, thank them for coming. Invite them back. So, we are now open for questions and answers. I'm having difficulty hearing you. Could you speak a little louder?
I don't think they're not.
Yeah.
There's no fee.
I get that you got the decorating in. I'm a little worried about trying to film with all the stuff.
What? Who was that happening?
I'm sorry. What's the question? Kalidas, can you help?
I like that, your crumble is really well baked. It's nice and crunchy.
And the second one is caramel. Yeah. Really great caramel flavor. Thank you.
I know you're a really good baker. I've tasted your food. This is shocking, man. Shocking. Thanks, Misha.
Thank you.
This is like warm macaroni dough.
Caramel has a flavor. Sounds nice.
Joe, can you hear me?
I can hear you. I just can't hear her.
Okay. So Neil's question is it advantageous to have an open house in a location other than your usual meeting space?
Yes, it can be. And I already related to you the instance with the library. But
go ahead, Joe.
Okay, there are advantages and disadvantages of doing either. The advantage to doing it at another location is that it may be less challenging for someone to come to a restaurant or something other than your meeting room, particularly if your meeting room is in a large building. Some people, particularly if you meet in the evenings, particularly women, are reluctant to come into a large building unescorted. So that's one of the things you can look at for your open house, that if you have if you meet in a building that has a large lobby and there's no security guard in the lobby, you may want to have someone in the lobby meeting your guests and escorting them upstairs. The disadvantage of meeting at another location is that you're then going to invite someone to a different location for your regular meetings. And people are really creatures of habit. People get into a routine and they like having routines. So if they are coming to your regular meeting place for the open house, it becomes easier for them to come back to that location for your regular meetings.
Okay, Joe?
Yes.
Any more questions for Joe? So far we have had only one question. Now, while you're thinking about your next question, I can fill in a few more details there. Joe explained in detail about setting up for organizing the open house. When you do that, if you want a reason to motivate your fellow team members, fellow Toastmasters. You could tell them that being on the committee or being on the chair, being a chair, can be used as a HPL, a high performance leadership project, which actually is a requirement in the legacy system of Toastmasters. In the pathway system, it's not mandatory, but it actually is included in one of the paths. So if someone is looking for a project to do as a HPL, organizing an open house could be one, being a chair, or taking one of those critical roles could be used as a HPL. Now that we have close to 15 months or maybe 17 months left on the legacy system, being part of the committee can also be used towards the CL, which is a competent leader manual. You go through that manual if any of you are using it. It can fulfill one of those projects on the CL as well. So these are incentives that you can use to motivate your teammates to be part of the team. Now the second part I wanted to fill in where Joe left. Joe mentioned certain item numbers which you can use to prepare your own guest package. If any of you are interested in the numbers or the soft copy of the document itself, please let me or Joe know, and we can help you find those, or we can find it for you and send it across to you so that you can print it and prepare your own guest packages. Now I can take the next question for Joe. Looks like there are no more questions, Joe.
My goodness, I did that good of a job. Certainly, if you want to get in touch with either Kalidas or me, my email is joemadley@yahoo.com. That's joemadley@yahoo.com. And I typically answer emails either very late at night or in the morning. So if you send me an email during the day, in all likelihood, you will not get an email back until the following day. So I'm happy to respond to individual requests, and I certainly have enjoyed talking to you and hope you gained some things from it. If you have anything that you would like to share with us as successes once you have your open house, please let us know. And I think also that Kalidas has a marketing budget, so if you need information for hard copy flyers that you don't download from the TI website, he may be able to provide those to you. So I really recommend having a guest packet. If someone invests their time to attend your meetings as a result of an open house invitation, give them something they walk away with. And as I mentioned in my example of the guy with this project, may not be of benefit right away, but if that person has something in their hands for a future date, they will come back. They may come back as a specific need, like one of the people in a kickoff meeting I did in Redwood City yesterday. As part of her introduction, I had asked each of the presenters to give me a reason of why they came into Toastmasters. And hers was very specific. She said that her boss was out ill one day and she had to host a webinar. And she knew the material, but she was frightened to death of delivering it. And she decided right then and there that being that frightened for something that could be a benefit to her job was not a good thing. And she joined Toastmasters to be able to deliver good presentations in a webinar should her boss ask her to do so in the future.
Yeah. Neil says, Neil has an idea, which I think is an excellent idea. He says, as part of the guest package, apart from the flyer, apart from the membership form, we can also include a copy of the Toastmasters magazine. So if you have a lot of members in the club, I'm sure all of you get the Toastmasters magazine. So it could be a recent one, it could be something from the past, but something to show that this is what it looks like. When you become a member, this is what you get and this is what you gain. That's an excellent idea, Neil. Thank you for that.
I agree, and it was something I did leave out, but it is a good, not a good, it's a great suggestion. The more credibility you can give to Toastmasters, that it is a worldwide organization, and that people can transfer their membership to any place in the world once they join, is also another selling point of the program.
Yeah. Now, if you had any trouble making a note of Joe's email ID, please send an email to me. My official email ID is growth@d4tm.org. Growth, GROWTH @d4tm.org, and I can certainly connect you with Joe. Since we don't seem to have any more questions,
okay.
To
Well,
thank all the attendees.
I thank you all. You've been a great audience. This is the first time I've spoken to people that I'm not seeing. So with that, thank you and good night.
Thank you, Joe.
You're welcome.
Thank you all for your time and your readiness to attend this. We hope that you gain from this experience, and as I said earlier, later this night this recording will be uploaded to the d4tm.org site, and I'll be sending out an email to all the attendees with information on where to find the recording. Okay. And if any of you are interested in the PowerPoint itself, we can send it to you as well. Neil, you requested for the PowerPoint. I'll make sure that I send a copy to you. Thanks again. Wish you all a good night. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.